Clair Obscur Expedition 33 shouldn't even exist yet. Based on it recently coming out and taking the industry by
It
storm.
seems like what this game is
And what it represents is everything. The mega publishers who control everything don't really want to exist in video games today. And yet everyone seems to be playing
And
it.
I'm
About
currently
8 or 9 hours into the experience myself. And yeah, it's
Let me tell you
special. But what I've noticed about this game is that the upbringing and creation of Clair Obscur has done what some might deem impossible in today's gaming landscape. Because Clair Obscur isn't just a great game, it's an embarrassment when you compare it to what the industry has been pushing for years. You can call it a wake-up call, exposing whatever you want to make it sound more convincing. But Clair Obscur just shamed the industry with its existence in the best way possible. To give you the basic setup without any real spoilers. The game is about a group of sent out on an expedition to face some that is named the Painters. I'm not really sure yet who the painter is, since I haven't met her in game yet. But the idea is that this world that you're in is hinging on collapsing due to how many people are dying that are trying to stop this apocalypse from happening. Pretty much. And the game starts off with this beautiful farewell ceremony as loved ones and depart to face this godlike beast, being that keeps inching closer to their obliteration. And you play as Gustav, who looks like Robert Pattinson, kind of. And I didn't know this, but he's voiced by Charlie Cox. Yeah, the MCU's Daredevil is the main character guy here. Which is a cool surprise, I gotta say. But what I love about Clair Obscur so far is, despite it being a Western game, it smartly hasn't made any of its characters feel insufferable or tied down to any stupid ideologies that exist in our real world. I haven't heard or seen anything dumb or condescending in this game yet. This game's, which is clearly inspired by French architecture, music, and more. The development team, Sandfall Interactive, is French after all. But despite it having this connection, the world just feels wholly unique, otherworldly, and at times alien. Even I have a good feeling. I know what the Painters really is, but I don't want to say my theory, cause it might be. But a spoiler. Let's just say this game's world and its mythology. It's captivating and it's instantly interesting. And it all just kind of pulls you in. The game also works as a turn-based battle system, which may turn people off. But hear me out. I've played hundreds of turn-based games. I'm a veteran of Final Fantasy and more. And I gotta say that the battle system on offer here is easily one of the best turn-based systems there's ever been in a video game. So far, you don't just click X and then watch. Well, the basic attack is that, but every ability or skill has kind of button presses that you click at certain times. And this then leads to the attacks you must also time button presses, even when using healing spells too. Beyond the time button presses, which feels a lot like Legend of Dragoon's Edition, which man, that's a throwback. But Legend of Dragoon was one of my favorite JRPGs. Growing still for a little bit out for my guy left, and that game's battle system was way ahead of its time too. And Clair Obscur, that feels like a modernized and evolved version of what Legend of was doing back in the 90s, but in the best way possible. Outside of the time button edition system, you can also parry attacks, dodge them, and eventually jump over certain attacks and counter them. The parry especially will feel right at home for people who play. And this is a weird connection, but trust me, it works but Souls-likes. Actually, games like Sekiro or Kaizen and more are all games I love so much. And that pairing in those games, it will pay off when you're playing Clair Obscur. Believe me, because the game has this satisfying parry system where you can block almost every attack and do big damage in return, and learning the enemy's movements, which aren't difficult in my opinion to read again. Maybe because I played so many Souls-likes, but the fact that DNA connects to this game is really weird. Man, is it awesome. You also have finite healing potions and such too, which also reminded me of having my Estes flasks in Dark Souls. And just like Dark Souls and other games like your Estes flasks and other healing replenish when you rest. Which is basically your bonfire pretty much. Flag sight. Don't get scared thinking this game is hard though. Trust me, it isn't. It has difficulty that you can change at any time. And difficulty does not affect trophies or achievements either. You can play this on easy and do just fine. But the fact that the game has that Souls, like DNA in it, is kind of wild. But badass, and the way the entire game has told its story so far. It's also giving me, vibe connections to other JRPGs that I've played in the past. The obvious connection here would be games like Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy IX, and weirdly enough, it reminds me of Final Fantasy Type 0. Played that one. Type 0 was about young soldiers going to war to fight to the Clair Obscur setup and how it's playing out. It feels similar to me in a good way that are in this terrible situation, not because they want to be in there necessarily, but because they have to defend their home from this godlike being. I guess
The combat
so.
is incredibly satisfying if you enjoy turn-based games.
And I think the way this
battle system works is that it will even entertain and probably entice
RPG
action
fans
due to how quick it is and how it's all designed. The level up system too, and how that works. Also ties into other games you've maybe played as well. The Picta system is where you equip different abilities. And once you win a certain amount of battles with that Picto attached, your entire party learns that ability, and then they can all use it. Then you have Lumina. Think of these like ability points. And then you're able to spend your Lumina, sort of like how in Final Fantasy IX did it, with their gear having abilities that you then equip. And you can customize each member to have whichever ability you want on, so you can turn characters into, say, big-time bruisers who do basic damage and leave enemies defenseless with their attacks, or turn someone into a marksman and have their gunshots burn their enemies, and also cause a status effect. That's called Mark II happen, which then makes them take more damage. But then you can use magic powers to burn your enemies. And then, for example, have one character whose name is Mayel, or I think her name is That's how you say it. But she's anyway, the red-headed and her whole entire kit is based on stances. And for example, she could enter a powerful stance where she does double damage with her next attack if she uses certain abilities against enemies that, for example, are on fire. But Mahale could also use other abilities. She has to change her stance, so she can become either offensively based or even defensively based, given the situation. Then you have the main character, Gustav. His skill set is more simple, but still very effective pretty much, so far anyways. Gustav works with something called charges. Every time he hits, he gains one charge, and Gustav has a robotic arm similar to Nero and Devil May Cry 5. And the idea is, once you get Gustav to 10 charges in his robotic arm, you can then discharge that buildup in an explosive blast called Overcharge that does massive damage to a single enemy. I'm sure Gustav's kid will evolve as I play, but there's so much more to it. You even have skill points that you get when you level up, and then you can allocate like Dark Souls into your health or your luck and your speed and so on. And then you have who is my favorite character in the game. She's this badass Asian woman who's basically like Jennifer from The Witcher, and Lunai's system has to do with elemental stains. Whatever element she uses, it gives her a stain of that element. So you use fire, you get fire stain. Then you can spend to do cool things with your abilities. In combat, there's more characters too, but I don't want to spoil anything beyond that for you. But the idea is that every single character has a totally unique skill set, their own mechanics that are wholly unique to just them. And it may sound overwhelming, but it really isn't. But it makes combat very interesting, because you're able to balance all of these mechanics that each character can do. And then as you play, you'll start realizing that, oh wow, if I have Lune and Mael on my team, I can use Lune to burn enemies, and if Mael attack them that are in her skill set alone, to then make her enter that special stand where she does even more damage, giving Lunai Mael using their Lamino points to make them gain ability points in combat and extra critical hit damage when those enemies are marked. And you can mark them by giving Gustav an ability. That makes it so his gun can mark enemies when he shoots them. And then you can see how one thing will lead to another. That leads to another. It's deep and really rewarding. To figure this all out beyond the Pictos, the game also has a skill tree for every character that unlocks as you play the game. Skill on the tree isn't something basic like +5 attack or something. Instead, every skill note is a brand new mechanic or ability. You can then use that, has their own animations, and whatever else. That ties into that character's unique skill set. For example, Mael can unlock abilities to give everyone protection against or she can use another ability to take damage in place of other characters. But then you could also arm AI that increase her counterattack damage and then give her ability points when she successfully counters or dodges attacks. So in a way, you can turn all the heat onto her alone. And then she's almost like a tank in like an MMO and raid. Then you can just start dodging and parrying and jumping over attacks and dealing massive counter damage to enemies. Well, you know your companion's safe. That's awesome. What I also love is that the game does reward your skill too. At one point, I entered an area that was clearly not meant for me. Yet we've all been there in a game. Do you ever play something and you enter somewhere and enemies are like to shooting you? I probably should leave, yeah. So I entered one of those areas anyway. If this was like other JRPG games and stuff like that, I would be forced to just leave. Cause even in old school Final Fantasy games, you can't really rely on dodging or blocking when it comes to enemies clearly that are way stronger than you usually. But again, due to the fact that Clair Obscur allows you to parry, and I was able to make my way through this huge level that I'm not even done yet. I actually stopped playing the game to write this video first. That I had no business fighting enemies, but again caused the game rewards. And my many hours play in Souls-likes have tempered me. I was able to move around enemy attacks and still defeat them. I was even beating mini-bosses, which were definitely outside of my character's damage and health pools by a large margin. One attack from any of these mini-bosses would pretty much kill me. And sure, I would die here and there, but I would just come back and fight the mini-bosses again because I was able to reach or deflect or dodge and lo and behold, I would still beat them anyways. And then when you beat these guys, I would get wicked weapons. Like, for example, one boss, and I got an amazing weapon for Luna. Was far higher level than powerful then, and she had any right at that point in the game. That's why it's awesome. And it has that like connection to it that I'm saying. Because if this were like any other RPG or whatever, I would be forced to just away with my tail between my legs. But Obscur actually rewards your exploration and skill. You can technically fight anything as long as you're good enough at understanding the mechanics and the enemy movements, which is dope, dude. I should also mention the levels are weirdly huge, and I wasn't prepared for how big many of the levels are so far. No, it's not open world or anything, but the way the game's levels there's plenty of hidden areas, designed mini-bosses, and more to find as you play. I found things like extra killing charges, revives, new weapons, pictos. There's plenty of areas off the beaten path that you can discover as well. I once found a battle arena where I could fight these paintbrush-looking creatures in Satokorima. One combat, and I was able to complete it. And I got a bunch of new abilities that specifically powered up my characters if they fought solo. There's a lot to find, is what I'm saying. And from what I understand, I'm still on the first continent. I guess you could say still. I'm almost level 19 in the amount of things I found. In the 9 or so hours I've played. Staggering. But what's crazy about Clair Obscur is that it shows and proves that we don't need modern games to go in the direction that it's currently heading in. As you all know, Nintendo is trying, sadly, successfully pushing the new meta of $80 American digital and $90 for physical games. Nintendo Switch 2s are sold out everywhere. And my fear is that other companies will inevitably follow and make their games $80 or $90 as well, like Nintendo. But here comes Clair Obscur, and it's only $65 Canadian at release, or I guess $50 American yet. The amount of polish, grandness, depth, and all mechanics is so well and beyond I've seen in most AAA releases in the past few years. And then some, by the way. Clair Obscur isn't even AAA technically. It's an indie game. You could call it AA, I guess. But the point is that the game is not full price, nor was its budget anywhere near the scope of, say, Assassin's Creed Shadows or something like that. But what's also wild to me is that Sandfall Interactive, which are the devs behind Clair Obscur, there are only 30 people in total. You heard that right, 30 people made this game. It took them 5 years but to do it. But the fact that a game of this scope was made by a fraction of the studio size that it took to make something like Assassin's Shadows is genuinely insane to me. And the reason why I keep bringing up Shadows is for good reason, because, in case you didn't know, Sandfall Interactive is made up mostly of Ubisoft devs. I know, this game was made by developers who worked on Assassin's Creed, Ramon, Rainbow Six Siege, and Sandfall Interactive also posted this on Twitter saying, "We are currently the top reviewed game on Meta for 2025 Speechless. So many incredible games have been released this year. Thank you. Wow, thank you. Look at that. A game that has reached the mid-90s on Meta. And the developers aren't smug about it at all. They're just thankful they're not attacking fans, or banning them from Discord moderation groups, or policing their languages, or pushing stupid identity politics, or making the women insufferable girl bosses, and the men sniveling weaklings. They just made a video game that didn't talk down to anyone, and instead focused on the game's story, on ensuring the game's world feels familiar, but removed from reality. Just enough that none of the real world politics that we know are it's plaguing. No body type A or B. Nothing it's like that. It's just a video game to buy and play back in the day. And it's so refreshing. Oh my god. It's so nice to see guys you have no idea. And the way these devs are acting with their fans is how you should do it. They're not alienating people based on political or religious factions. They're just protecting players from everywhere. And with they're saying this is not a political statement. It's not even gonna break your bank account buying just a video game made by people who love the medium. And that's beautiful, if you ask me. Like I said, this game was made by ex-Ubisoft developers. And I think I speak for us all when I say, where the hell were these people within Ubisoft? This whole Ubisoft hasn't made a critically acclaimed game in a really long Maybe the last time they did a Ramon was their best reviewed game. And that's been like, what, 10 years at least? And I think what Clair Obscur more than anything to me is it raises the question of just how many of these sorts of devs, like these people who made Clair Obscur, exist right now in the industry. How many talented devs are there out there right now who are clearly capable of making peak, but are also being chained down by these companies? You delivered these slop simulators and rehashed by the numbers open world franchise tied games instead. Cause these some of them worked on Assassin's Creed. And look, I beat Shadows. I reviewed it for the channel. And if you put a gun to my forehead right now,
I couldn't tell you most of the side content, or even the main quests that I did in that game, cause they're so forgettable. The story was awful. The political statements being made in it were terrible. Yasuke was so forced so heavily. They even say at one point in that game that he's the greatest after only being in Japan for 6 months. The guy didn't even know what a katana was half a year ago. Come on, you can't be serious. And yet that game Shadows, was made by thousands of developers. It took well over 5 years and then some to be created, and likely costed 10 or lima times the budget of what Clair Obscur in comparison, if not even more than that. Look at the reception, critically and player-wise, from Clair Obscur, and now compare it to Shadows. Completely different receptions. There was so much animosity and hate for Shadows, and rightfully so, all the force damaging to the shrines. The complete disregard for Japanese history. Yasuke being implemented as a playable character. I could keep going. I've done videos on this before. I'm just gonna keep moving, but anyways, put it this way. If you compare Assassin's Creed Shadows Steam chart numbers to Clair Obscur, it's kind of insane, really. Clair has already surpassed the highest concurrent player count that Shadows is able to achieve. Reminder that Shadows released on the same day of the week that Clair Obscur did as well, so it's a nice comparison. And both these games had similar release windows, and Clair was able to obtain more concurrent players in one day versus Shadows having the entire weekend to itself. That's actually insane. Remember that the Oblivion remaster is out right now as well, so the fact that Clair is getting these numbers is actually insane, given the competition that it's facing. And Sandfall Interactive also recently posted, Obscur has also passed 500,000 copies sold already. Within one day, that's copies sold, by the way. Unlike Ubisoft, who was using their, certain language like players, instead of copy, sold to swindle their numbers to be higher than they actually were. And look at how Sandfall responded to their milestone. They set a milestone for us, reached sooner than we'd ever imagined. Thank you all again. Just grateful. Pleasant. And mature. No punching down, no stupid nonsense. Imagine that, just releasing your game and letting it speak for itself. And not ruining your image in the name of some stupid pandering nonsense. Even the female characters actually look like real women from a Western game in 2025. What is this? Where are the hit pieces? Attacking the game for making men and look like actual men. All right, they won't, because they know if they do, they'll get dog-piled by the entire internet. And for good reason. And like I said earlier, knowing that this game came out of the ashes of Ubi's, it just makes me wonder how many other experiences like these are currently being chained down by these mega corporations, who refuse to take risks and deliver smaller but far superior experiences instead of their rehashed franchises again and again. If these devs pitched Clair Obscur to While working there, we all know, they would have shut this game's pitch down super fast. Imagine pitching this to you. We want to make a 30-hour turn-based RPG game that is heavily story-driven and relies on character emotions. We also want to make a game that isn't technically open world, has an overworld map where you can run around, like in classic RPGs. Also, we don't want to do anything like a battle pass or tons of paid cosmetic or a cash shop either. The game won't be full and price. It'll also offer about 30 hours of side content too. Are you kidding me? Ubisoft would have lynched these devs for even trying to propose this game to them. They would burn this game's pitch with their cigars and tell these devs to shut up and go make another Assassin's Creed. And don't forget to put a chick in it and make her lame and gay while you're at it. And I can only imagine how many more brilliant ideas developers within this industry have right now that simply cannot come to fruition. Simply because these big publishers aren't willing to make them because they can't monetize with the hell and back stupid agenda slop in it like they usually do. You ask me. Obscur is a game, like I said at the beginning, that technically shouldn't exist. Everything this game is represents the antithesis of what the executives and publishers want from video games today. Notice how I didn't say what players want, because in fact, this is what we want actually. We want cool, unique experiences like this game, but it doesn't really fit the mold of the industry. Yet the reception, both fan-wise and critically well, it paints a different picture. How long can this industry, especially in a Western sense, we need to keep pushing agenda live service games? We already saw how PlayStation has canceled a dozen live service games leaving their first-party studios, sitting 5 years into their current console's lifespan, with barely any PlayStation exclusive experiences defined by. Instead, remastered or remade Last of Us 1 and 2 already. Like 4 times instead, and by this point in the PS4, or even the PS3's life cycle, we had dozens of great experiences. But the industry now in the PS5 era is all about things that frankly
I don't care much about it, if I'm being
don't
honest.
care.
I'm just losing interest in live service games. I'm even finding it hard to play Marvel Rivals at times.
I played Fortnite recently with friends.
After saving my game in Clair Obscur.
And oh my god,
the boredom
dude.
that I felt playing Fortnite following Clair Obscur was intangible.
Let me tell you.
It was like going from eating a Michelin star
with
steak
all the potatoes and beautiful
and a
salad
nice rum
to
and
suddenly
Coke.
being given Little Caesars pizza.
That's been in the fridge for like 2 days, pretty
And
much.
like, I'm not saying eating pizza is
But if
bad,
I had to choose between
or
that
a beautiful steak, I know what I'm picking.
and that's the
If
thing.
there's anything I've noticed this
is
year,
that real passion is what
and
wins
even
players.
the industry come awards time too.
Think about it, right?
When was the last time a truly live
Game
service
of the
game
year
won at the
I
Game
can
Awards?
tell
I remember
you.
it was 2016 when Overwatch won it.
ever since
We've seen
Overwatch.
countless ripoffs from Battleborn. Even
Hell.
Marathon to a degree is doing similar slap too. Even now. And the response to Marathon's alpha has been
Not
great,
well.
to put it lightly. Yet every other game that won Game of the Year since, at either the Game Awards or whichever website, has been resoundingly single-player games. Sure, some of them have
Elden
co-op,
Ring,
for example, or like It Takes Two won Game of the Year as well. But most of the time, it's single-player
Elden
games.
Ring
again, Sekiro God of War, 2018 Astrobot, Baldur's Gate 3, the list goes on. All these games were passion projects made by talented developers.
Hell,
You
even to
go
this
to Baldur's
day.
Gate 3's player counts on
To
Steam.
show you
a
how.
single-player game that is made with passion can still reel in players. Years later, actually. Let's go look at Baldur's Gate
Steam
3
chart
numbers right
And,
now.
oh,
Over
look at
100,000
that.
players for a single-player game. That is almost 2 years old at this point. Imagine that. No battle, no microtransactions, no cash outs, nothing. Just a great RPG. That gave people the choice to make
However
the adventure.
they
And
wanted
look
it
at
to
how
be.
it's paying off for them. And the first being beloved in a similar fashion to Baldur's Gate 3. Will it have the same staying power in 2 years? But I can say I wouldn't be surprised if Clair Obscur doesn't win some form of Game of the Year. Somewhere, or at the very least, Best Music. Maybe Story Studio, something like that. Because it's very clear that the industry is dictated and controlled from the top by the executives of these companies. And all they want
the
is
easiest
money.
way
To make
is to money to
something
them.
people know. And then monetize the bejuicious out of them. And frankly, I'm tired of it. I really am. I find myself more often than
Seeking
not
out
unique single-player experiences instead. My 3 favorite games of the year so far are Clair Obscur, the first Berserker Kazan and Mandragora, Whispers of the Witch. These 3 games were all made by talented dev studios that offered unique takes on their genres that were wholly at their core. Single-player games that didn't inject political nonsense into themselves or make the player pay loads of money afterwards. For content, we need more games like Clair Obscur, Kazin, or Mandragora. And then some. Need these games that these might think shouldn't exist because they're not monetizable enough. There's not enough force.
Where's the cash?
We can add weekly and daily challenges to force players to keep playing our games for currency and whatnot. So we can then put their engagement numbers in a spreadsheet to show investors. They give us more we can
money.
keep buying more.
The fact
yachts. You had people like Ken Levine, the creator of BioShock and BioShock
Clair
Infinite,
Obscur,
and saying this on Twitter. He said, watching the opening of Clair Obscur and feeling humbled as an artist. What a masterful and heartbreaking setup for a story. You know how much praise that is? That's like Santa Claus coming to your house personally on Christmas to give you your gift himself. We don't see games like this often, is the point. And I think we need to support games like this more now than ever before. Cause the way the industry wants to go is to charge you even more for less in the future. Nintendo wants you to spend $90 on the next Mario Kart. Dude, that's almost 50% more money from Mario Kart than it is, pretty much, to buy Clair Obscur. Right now, you gotta be kidding me. I can see the industry's having an identity crisis. They want to push one which is the same franchises over and over again without much to continue their cash gravy trains. But it's obvious that many players like myself, we just want unique games again. The Xbox Arcade era of games. I miss when Sony was releasing weird unique games every other month. Like the Unfinished Swan or Concrete Genie. I miss the great games of the PS3 era, like Infamous or Eternal Sonata. These games that weren't trying become my life for the next 1,000 hours or demand that I spend all my to get life the most savings out of their experiences. I just miss these games that respected my time, my energy, my wallet, and most importantly, my intelligence. I'm tired of hollowed out games that think checking boxes is what makes a game good, instead realizing it's the people who make them instead. The fact these devs couldn't make this game at Ubisoft and had to leave is what irks me the most. Is not that these games aren't capable of being made, that the talent isn't there when surely it clearly is. It's simply that these companies are refusing to allow their developers to make what they really want to make. When you compare Marathon to Clair Obscur, should tell you everything. It feels more like a game
was being
than
made by developers
who were told what they should make, instead of allowing them to make what they actually wanted to make in the first place. And Clair Obscur is simply that it's weird. It has bizarre level design,
locales,
like an underwater world that you can breathe in. Somehow the enemies look freaky and messed up at times. The characters feel like real people, and they feel imperfect, which is great. And they aren't saying real stuff like Tasha and Dragon Age saying, "So, I'm non-binary," and whatever else. It just feels like a game from a time where games were made with passion by developers who were eager to make something, not cause a monetary value, but simply because they really wanted to make art. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that should be celebrated. And maybe the industry can learn from this game that cost way less than Next Inevitable, Call of Duty, or Division game. This game, where there's like 8 hours of music that is made for it, where it's a weird experiment RPG that offers deep RPG complexities and harkens back to Legend of Dragoon. And it calls back to when classics like Final Fantasy IX and more were what the industry was pushing. Instead of Call of Duty, insert buzzword here, and Assassin's Creed, here we go again. No. 15 from what I've played so far of it has exceeded all expectations and delivered something truly memorable. And the fact it costs way less than most games do, yet has more than those games and offers an experience the industry doesn't seem able to make due to corporate oversight. It truly is a game that shouldn't even exist. And yet it's here. And I hope you play it. Even if you don't like turn-based RPG, I hope you give it a try. See that it is nowhere as simple to play as you might believe it to be. I hope there's more games like this in the future. And maybe, just maybe, the industry can learn from this game, because Clair Obscur didn't just embarrass the industry. Fellas, what most of these studios are doing for a fraction of the price, and with less actual developers making it, than probably the entire HR department at Ubisoft alone. And it's how Ubisoft and other companies take thousands of years to deliver absolute slop. And it's very obvious that game budgets are completely out of whack, that they're full of bloat and the medium. It just needs a reset. But what do you think about Clair Obscur? Are you going to play it? Are you all ready? What do you think? Let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.